Hey everyone, and welcome to our video on Charles Ponzi, the man who made $15 million with postage stamps. Today, we're going to take a closer look at Ponzi's life, his notorious scheme, and how he managed to pull it off without getting caught for as long as he did. But before we get into the details, let's start with some background information on who Charles Ponzi was. Who is Charles Ponzi? Charles Ponzi was born in Lugo, a small town in Italy, in 1882. He was the son of a postmaster and grew up in a middle-class family. Despite his relatively privileged upbringing, Ponzi's early life was marked by financial struggles and setbacks. In 1903, at the age of 21, Ponzi immigrated to the United States, arriving in Boston with just $2.50 in his pocket. He worked a variety of odd jobs, including as a dishwasher and a waiter, before landing a job as a clerk at a bank. It was during his time at the bank that Ponzi first became interested in finance and investments. He began to study financial publications and to develop his own ideas about how to make money in the stock market. In 1917, Ponzi started his own business, the Securities Exchange Company, which would eventually lead him down the path to creating the infamous Ponzi scheme. At the time, the U.S. was experiencing a period of economic growth and prosperity, and many people were looking for ways to make quick money. Ponzi saw an opportunity to capitalize on this trend by offering a scheme that promised huge returns with little to no risk. The scheme was based on the idea of buying and reselling international postage coupons, taking advantage of a loophole in the postal system that allowed for arbitrage opportunities. Ponzi claimed that he could buy the coupons in countries with weaker currencies and then sell them in the U.S. for a profit. Despite the fact that the scheme was inherently flawed and could not possibly generate the returns that Ponzi promised, he was able to convince thousands of people to invest their money with him. He used his charm, charisma, and persuasive abilities to build trust and to convince people that his scheme was legitimate. Ponzi's scheme quickly spiraled out of control, and he became one of the most notorious financial fraudsters in history. But despite his eventual downfall, Ponzi's legacy lives on, both as a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and as a reminder of the importance of regulatory oversight in the financial industry. What is Ponzi known for? Ponzi is best known for the Ponzi scheme, a fraudulent investment scheme that promised huge returns to investors in a short amount of time. The scheme was based on the idea of buying and reselling international postage coupons, taking advantage of a loophole in the postal system that allowed for arbitrage opportunities. Ponzi convinced thousands of people to invest their money with him, promising a 50% return on their investment within 45 days. He claimed that he was able to achieve such high returns by buying international postage coupons in countries with weaker currencies and selling them in the United States for a profit. The scheme proved incredibly popular, and Ponzi quickly became a wealthy man, claiming to have made millions of dollars in just a few months. However, as we'll soon see, his wealth and success were built on a foundation of lies and deceit. How did Ponzi get away with it? One of the most remarkable things about the Ponzi scheme is how long Ponzi was able to keep it going without getting caught. There were a few factors that contributed to his success. First, the scheme relied on the trust and greed of his investors. Many of Ponzi's early investors were desperate for a way to make money, and they were willing to overlook warning signs and red flags in order to get in on the action. Additionally, Ponzi was a skilled marketer and salesman, and he was able to convince people that his scheme was legitimate and profitable. Second, Ponzi was able to pay out the initial investors with money from later investors. This made the scheme appear to be legitimate and profitable, and word of mouth led to more and more people investing their money with Ponzi. Third, there was a lack of regulation and oversight in the financial industry at the time. Ponzi was able to operate his scheme without much interference from authorities, and he was able to use the postal system to carry out his fraud without much scrutiny. What did Ponzi do with his money? With all the money pouring in from his scheme, Ponzi was able to live a lavish lifestyle. He bought expensive cars, jewelry, and clothes, and he invested in other businesses and real estate. One of Ponzi's most notable purchases was a mansion in Lexington, Massachusetts, which he bought in 1920 for $75,000. The mansion was known as the Ponzi Palace and featured luxurious amenities such as a billiards room, a ballroom, and a swimming pool. Ponzi also invested heavily in the stock market, buying up shares of various companies and making speculative trades. He was known to be a risk taker and a gambler, and his investments often reflected this. In addition to his personal spending, Ponzi also used some of his money to further his scheme. He paid out high returns to his initial investors in order to attract even more money into the scheme, and he also used some of the money to bribe government officials and journalists who were investigating his activities. However, despite his attempts to live a lavish lifestyle and to protect his wealth, Ponzi's scheme eventually caught up with him. The exposure of his fraud led to a run on the banks where he had deposited his investors' money, and he was left with little to no money by the time he was arrested and charged with mail fraud. In the end, Ponzi's extravagant spending and risky investments serve as a reminder of the dangers of financial fraud and the importance of ethical behavior in the financial industry. While Ponzi may have enjoyed his wealth for a time, his legacy is one of deception, greed, and ultimately, downfall. How did Ponzi get caught? Despite Ponzi's efforts to keep his scheme under wraps, it eventually caught the attention of the Boston Post, a local newspaper. The paper began investigating Ponzi's claims and published a series of articles exposing the fraud. Once the scheme was exposed, there was a run on the banks Ponzi had used to hold investors' money, and he was unable to pay back the investors. In August 1920, Ponzi was arrested and charged with multiple counts of mail fraud. Ponzi's trial was a media sensation, with reporters from around the country descending on Boston to cover the proceedings. Ponzi was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in prison. What happened to Ponzi after he was caught? After serving his sentence, Ponzi was deported back to Italy. He tried to start a new life there, but it wasn't long before he was arrested again for another fraud scheme. He spent time in prison in Italy and Brazil before eventually returning to the United States in the 1930s. Conclusion: the story of Charles Ponzi and his infamous scheme is a cautionary tale that continues to captivate and fascinate people today. It is a reminder of the dangers of unchecked greed, the power of persuasive marketing, and the importance of regulatory oversight in the financial industry. One of the key lessons from the Ponzi scheme is the importance of doing your due diligence and thoroughly researching any investment opportunity before investing your money. Don't be swayed by promises of high returns or get-rich-quick schemes that seem too good to be true. Remember, there are no shortcuts to financial success, and any investment opportunity that promises outsized returns with little to no risk should be viewed with skepticism. Another important lesson from Ponzi's story is the importance of transparency and accountability in the financial industry. The lack of regulation and oversight in the early 20th century allowed Ponzi to carry out his scheme for as long as he did. Today, we have more robust regulatory frameworks in place to protect investors and prevent fraud. However, it's important to remain vigilant and demand accountability from those who handle our money. Finally, the Ponzi scheme is a reminder of the human cost of financial fraud. While Ponzi himself may have profited from his scheme, his investors were left destitute and betrayed. It's easy to become enamored with the allure of quick riches, but we must always remember the human impact of our financial decisions. In the end, the story of Charles Ponzi and his infamous scheme serves as a cautionary tale for investors and regulators alike. It is a reminder of the dangers of greed and the importance of transparency, accountability, and regulatory oversight in the financial industry. Thank you for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content on finance, business, and economics. In the years after his release, Ponzi worked a variety of odd jobs, including selling advertising and writing for a newspaper. He also tried to clear his name and reclaim his wealth, but he was largely unsuccessful. He died in 1949, largely forgotten by the public.